salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Speaking by reciting the dua for the salamati, for the safety of the Imam of our time altogether. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma kun liwaliyak al-hujjata صلاتك عليها وعلى آبائها في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقاعدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا صاحب الزمان يا صاحب الزمان يا صاحب الزمان الغوث الأمان. Begin by seeking the permission of the Imam of our time for his safety. Please recite aloud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الأئمة المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتك. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Please recite aloud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Over the past few nights we had the tawfiq to go over some of the qualities, some of the characteristics of the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam. And it was quite important for us to be familiar with some of these characteristics and how to adopt them into our lives, how to utilize these days, how to adopt those values into our lives so that we can be like, inshallah, those companions, those 72 in Karbala, those women and children in Karbala for the Imam of our time. We said that in order to enter the university of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the university of the free, if you all remember, we concluded over a few nights ago that the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada had recognized what it means to have true freedom. They identified true freedom in this life as well as the next. And this was quite important for us. We said that even in the final moments of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he calls out to the enemies, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. At least be free in this world of yours. It's quite important for us. We have a hadith from one of our Imams, alayhi salam, where he mentions, "Man aqama bishara'ati al-hurriya fahuwa ahlu lil-itq." Whomsoever meets the conditions of freedom, then this person is truly free. Freedom isn't necessarily won by claims, by saying that, oh, I'm a free person. It's not necessary that that person is free. وَمَنْ قَصَّرَ عَنْ أَحْكَامِ الْحُرِّيَّةِ فَهُوَ أَهْلٌ لِلرِّقِّ. And whomsoever falls short of meeting these conditions, these requirements, then that person in reality, he's a slave. Whether he calls himself a free person, he can say that what he likes. If he doesn't meet these conditions, in reality he's a slave. And this is quite important for us. We said that Yusuf alayhi salam, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, although he's at the bottom of the well, although he's in prison, but realistically he's free. He's a free human being. On the other hand, someone like Zulaykha, who, although she's living in royalty, although she's living in a palace, in reality she's a slave. She's a slave to her desires until she reaches that stage where she understands the truth about freedom, who Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam is. But in the beginning she was far from freedom. Although she lived in royalty in a palace, she thought that she was free. And the hadith says that it has three conditions for it. It's quite important for us because these three things, they're not practiced in their true form, and it's something that we don't speak about much. These three qualities of freedom, which is quite needed in this day and age, especially in our communities. And those three are here. The first is haya, an inner form of decency, an inner form of shyness, an inner form of shame, having haya. The second is iffat. Iffat meaning a complete human being who holds this quality. And the third is ghayrat. Ghayrat meaning modesty, a person who is honorable. The inner sense of that is something called haya, inner decency. And when it comes outwards, when it's in a person's practice, in his libas, in the way he walks and talks in life, and that's called as modesty, ghayrat, haya. Ghayrat, honor. Please recite the loud salawat. And all three of these are connected to each other. We have a hadith which says, ثَمَرَةُ الْحَيَاءِ الْعِفَّةِ, that the fruit of inner decency is this quality, iffat, which means to be chaste, having chastity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a chaste human being. We have a narration which says, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ لَا يُغَارُ, may Allah's curse be upon the one who doesn't have this quality of ghayrat. This is a narration. إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَيُّورٌ يُحِبُّ كُلَّ غَيُّورٍ, that Allah is honorable, Allah is modest, and He loves the one who practices this quality of being honorable, being modest in life. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. It's quite interesting in this narration. He says that Fir'aun had a long life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Fir'aun a long life for three different reasons. Although Fir'aun, it doesn't mean that he's a good person. You all know Fir'aun's the person to claim that Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. He challenged Nabi Musa alayhi salam. He tried to challenge Allah. He killed newborn babies, Fir'aun. But Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says that there's three reasons as to why Allah prolonged his life. And another reminder is that, because if someone doesn't believe in the hereafter, then Allah rewards them for whatever goodness, whatever qualities they have in this world, in this limited life. He doesn't reward them in the hereafter. So the Imam says that there's three reasons as to why Allah prolonged the life of Fir'aun. The first is that he has a large kitchen in his kingdom, and from this kitchen he used to give food to the poor people, food to the beggars. And he would say, whoever wants to come and eat, they can come and eat. The second is he was Sahlul Hijab, meaning he was quite accessible for the public. Although he was Fir'aun, although he had a kingdom of tyranny at that time, if anyone wanted to ask him any questions, any citizen wanted to meet him, they didn't have to go through offices, through any representatives. In other words, his customer service was good, although he was Fir'aun. The third is that he was ghayur when it came to the affairs of his women, of his wife. That he held a certain characteristic of modesty. His wife wasn't put on display, although, they lived a life of royalty, and in royalty usually, the king and the queen, they sit together where the public can see them. When it came to the wife of Fir'aun, he used to be very observing of this characteristic. He held the honor of his wife. And the Imam says that it's because of these three reasons that Allah extended his life. And so this quality is quite important. Now, before the migration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, 20 years before the announcement of Islam, the announcement of the prophethood, there's a traveler who travels to the city of Makkah. He goes for the sake of business, and he has some products, he has some items on the back of his camel. Because at that time, a lot of people used to go to Makkah. It was one of the central cities where they used to carry out their business, they used to buy and sell, they used to trade. This person goes to Makkah, and he's about to sell one of his items. One of the people of Makkah, he's quite well known. He takes the item, but he doesn't give the money. And when he asks for the money, that native of Makkah, he runs away with the product. And this poor traveler who travels for the sake of business so that he can earn for his family, his children, he starts crying out in the public. He says, "Is there anyone to help? This person's stolen my products. I've traveled for miles and miles on end." No matter how much he cried, no one helped him in the city of Makkah, until one of the uncles of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, by the name of Zubayr, not the Zubayr at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a different Zubayr, one of the uncles of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he gets up and he says, "You know what, this is wrong. And I'm not going to allow this to happen. While I'm in the city of Makkah and someone's rights are snatched, no, I'm not going to allow this." So he says, let's make an agreement from now on that if anyone's rights are snatched in the city of Makkah, let's fight to get that person's rights back, and whoever steals, they'll be held accountable. A few people of Makkah put their names down for this agreement. One of those people was our Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And they called this agreement as Hilful Fasul. And a few years later, after the advent of Islam, when the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, when Islam was established in the city of Makkah, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that this contract, Hilful Fasul, this agreement, although it was before Islam, but the contract should remain because it's an honorable contract. It's a contract of ghayrat. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, whenever he used to remember that when the contract was first signed, he would say that, what an honorable contract. So this issue of ghayrat, dear brothers and sisters, is very important. It's very important. And there's, we've mentioned two events in history which aren't related to Islam. These are before the advent of Islam. One is the time of Fir'aun, and one is in the pre-Islamic era in Makkah. Please recite aloud salawat. Inna Allah ghayur yuhibbu kulla ghayur. Allah says, in the hadith it says that Allah is modest and He loves those who are modest. Now, we're going to try and simplify this term, ghayrat. A lot of our elders, they're familiar with this word. Ghayrat is in Urdu as well. But for our youth, we'll try and simplify this. Even for the elders as well, it's quite beneficial. Ghayrat meaning sensitivity according to a person's responsibility. This is very important. For example, if let's say we organize a bus and we want to go to a Julus, an Ashura Julus procession in London, The driver of this bus, he knows that his responsibility is to get everyone to London and back home. Now, based upon this responsibility that he has to be sensitive to that responsibility. He knows that he has to drive carefully. He knows that he has to take care of passengers. He knows that he can't speed race with any car that passes by. He can't overtake. He shouldn't fall asleep while driving. Sensitivity according to his responsibility. Similarly, a teacher's responsibility, for example, is to teach children. Based on this responsibility that he has to be sensitive to that. He has to follow up with the students' progression. He has to discuss if there's any issues with their parents. He has to take care of their education. Or for example, let's say a pilot, he has to be sensitive to that responsibility. He can't fall asleep. Or for example, even let's say someone sitting on this minbar, myself, sitting on the minbar of Maulana Hashim Hussaini, I have to be sensitive to this responsibility. The person who sits on the pulpit of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, he has to dress in a certain way, he has to live according to certain customs. He can't be disrespectful when it comes to that member. I can't dress in an indecent way, I can't talk in an indecent way. Sensitivity to my responsibility. Okay? Now every person in the area, every person in their line of work, their occupation, whatever they do, they have to be sensitive according to their responsibility. A father who, for example, has a daughter or a wife, he has to be sensitive to the responsibility as the man of the house. A man isn't just there to provide food and clothing for his family. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, that a man should have 3 qualities in the house. And if he doesn't have these 3 qualities, then he doesn't have manliness. If he doesn't have them, then he should at least strive for those. ثلاث الأمر يحتاج في بيته إلى 3 خلال. A man needs to have these 3 qualities. If he doesn't have these, then he should try hard to gain these. The first is معاشرة الجميلة. He should have good akhlaq. The family shouldn't feel threatened that when, the father comes in the house, they feel like the angel of death has come in the house. They should feel comfortable around the father or the husband of the house. Someone who has good akhlaq. They shouldn't feel that, we want our father to go on vacation for a very long time so we can have it. This isn't how it should be. A man should have a good akhlaq when he's in his home. The second the Imam mentions is si'atan bitaqdeer, giving time to your family. Don't be stingy when it comes to your time, when it comes to spending on your family. Although it should be according to a limit. I hope some people don't get the wrong idea out of this. Being generous when it comes to our family. Si'atan bitaqdeer, spending time on them. In Surah Hashr, ayah number 60, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the issue of hijab, which is related to this topic. Allah says to the Prophet, peace be upon him, O Prophet, tell your women. And this is quite important, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He instructs the Prophet to start with the women of his own home before any other women. He says, Ya ayyuhan nabi, qul, say to your women, banatik, then your daughters, and then the Muslim women. To all of the women who practice Islam, say, Yudnine alayhinna min jalabibihinna. Tell them to wear long coverings, long clothings which cover their body parts. Jilbab in Arabic means a clothing which covers you, which covers your body parts, something which forms hijab. Tell them to wear these, tell them to dress in a certain way, tell them to talk in a certain way, which doesn't misguide people, which doesn't create indecency in an environment. Now, in the next ayah of the Quran, it's very important, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions 3 groups. He says, O Prophet, tell these people that if you don't stop what you're doing, Allah says, if you don't stop what you're doing, then tell them that I will fight against you. I will wage war against you. Allah says, I will rise against you myself if you don't step back from what you're doing. There's three groups that Allah has mentioned here. One of those, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, are the munafiqeen. لَإِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ الْمُنَافِقُونَ. Number two, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٍ. The second category, Allah mentions those who have a disease in their heart. And the Mufassirin say that this is regarding a group of youth who used to gather outside Masjid al-Nabi at that time after Salat al-Isha, because it was quite dark, and they used to wait for Muslim women to come out of the prayers of the masjid, and they used to start name calling them. They used to start picking on the women, and they used to start throwing stones at them. Allah says to the Prophet, peace be upon him, tell these people, if you don't stop what you're doing, then I'm going to wage war against you. I will drive you out of the city of Medina if you don't stop. So the first group are the munafiqun, the second group are those who have a disease in their hearts. You know, if you have a disease in your heart, then Allah's given you remedies for that. Allah's provided marriage for that. What's your problem that you're standing outside Masjid al-Nabi and you're name calling women? Allah says, if they don't stop what they're doing, then I will order you to drive them out of the city of Medina. وَالْمُرْجِفُونَ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ. Those who create fear amongst the Muslims in the city of Medina regarding the kuffar, that oh no, the enemies of Islam are just around the corner. What are we going to do? They create fear amongst the ummah, create fear within the Muslims. Allah says, if you tell these three groups that if you don't stop what you're doing, I will drive you out of the city. Very firm. So you know, this is an ayah of honor. This is a stance which is honorable. A stance which is full of ghayrat. A modest stance. Please recite aloud salawat. So again, we said ghayrat meaning sensitivity according to a person's responsibility. Al-ghayratu min al-iman. The hadith says that he who is modest, modesty comes from faith. Similarly, if you have a daughter, if you have young daughters, then you have a responsibility to them. A person comes to one of our ulama and he says, Maulana, I'm really ashamed. Maulana asks him, why are you ashamed? He says that just recently I became familiar with the story of Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I newly became a Shia, and before this I didn't realize that how important the issue of hijab is for my household. Before this I didn't realize the dangers. But ever since I became familiar with the story of Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the issue of hijab, then I realized that, you know, I need to take this more seriously. All this time I've allowed my household to step out of the house without hijab. So, dear brothers and sisters, this comes back down to the issue of ghayrat, the issue of modesty. A lot of people have this misconception as well that, you know, if a sin is normalized in a society, for example, let's say hijab is reduced in a society, a lot of people claim, then it will become normalized and everyone will be used to it and there won't be any problems anymore. But what's important for us to remember is that normalizing a sin in society doesn't mean the root problem will go away. It doesn't mean the root cause of the corruption will go away. Rather, what will happen is when a sin is normalized in society, you all know very well, witnessing a lot of countries in the world, especially in the West, that when a sin is normalized, for example, lack of hijab in a society, then that sin will only progress to a greater level. Then the society will develop their desires to more animalistic desires, as we see today, unfortunately. So it all comes back down to the issue of modesty. And as followers of Zainab sallallahu alayha, as followers of Zainab sallallahu alayhi salam, please recite aloud the salawat. a sin doesn't mean that the lust will go away. It doesn't mean that the root cause of corruption will go away. This is really important. I want everyone to pay close attention. Abu Abdullah Hussain alayhi salam, at what time on the day of Ashura does he call out, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ? He says to the enemies, at least be free in this world of yours. When does he say this? When does he call out, Ya Muslim ibn Aqil, Ya Hani ibn Marwa, O my companions, get up, get back up. When does he say this? When the enemies are heading towards the camps of the women. This is when Imam Hussain al-Islam addresses the issue of ghayrat. He says, at least be free in this world of yours. And he doesn't say this when Ali Akbar alayhi salam is martyred, when Ali Akbar's body, his janazah is on the battlefield of Karbala. He doesn't say to the companions, get up at that point. He doesn't say to the companions, get up when Ali Asghar alayhi salam is shot with an arrow in the throat. He doesn't say it at that point. When does he say? When the enemies are heading towards the women. He says, idfa'u an haram Rasulullah. That get back up and defend the household, defend the women of Rasulullah. So this is why we need to take this issue of hijab, this issue of ghayrat, brothers and sisters, very seriously, inshallah. The Imam on the day of Ashura, he's reciting the khutbah when his companions, some of them are still alive. His flag bearer alayhi salam is still alive, Abbas alayhi salam is still alive, Ali Akbar is still alive. The Imam's reciting his khutbah, and suddenly he hears the sounds of the cries of his women from the camps. For example, the Imam's calling out to the enemies that, don't you recognize this great household that you've surrounded today? Suddenly he hears the cries of the women from the camps. The Imam stops his khutbah at that point and he says, O Abbas, O Ali Akbar, go back to the women and tell them to lower their voices. It's disrespectful for me, Maulana Hashim Hussaini says, I do not like it when a non-mahram hears the sound of my women. This has a big lesson for us. This comes back down to the issue of ghayrat. Even on the night of Ashura, Sayyid al-Shuhada, when he's with Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayhi on the night of Ashura, she breaks down, she cries and trembles. And the Imam, he consoles her, he says, oh my dear sister, it's offensive for me that a non-mahram hears you cry. Please recite salawat. The Imam says, it's offensive for me if a non-mahram hears you cry. See, this is the ghayrat, this is the modesty, this is the honor of Abu Abdullah Hussain al-Islam. And similarly, the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen herself, Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayha, when she enters the courtyard of Yazid, she faces all those difficulties, all those tragedies from Karbala to Kufa and then Kufa to Sham. And I don't know how many of you have been to Sham, but the entrance of the main gate into the city of Damascus, which was very small at that time, it's expanded now, the door of Sa'ad, it's about a 10-minute walk to the Darbar of Yazid rahmatullah alayh. Just a 10-minute walk. But narrations say that Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayha and the caravan, they are standing at the door when they're about to enter the city of Sham. It's early morning, it's near the time of Fajr. But when do they actually reach the Darbar of Yazid? Around the time of Zuhr. Meaning they were paraded around for so long. There was so much of a rush of people that they reached the Darbar by the time of Zuhr. This is very important for us. Is that Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayha, when she enters the court of Yazid, and he's called different representatives, he's called different officials of different governments. So many non-mahrams are in the Darbar of Yazid. So many non-mahrams. And while all of Yazid's own women, they're behind curtains, he's covered them, he has them in hijab. He's showing respect for his own women, but the women of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, are stood before everyone. And the first issue that Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa addresses, this is very important, the first issue she addresses is the issue of hijab. She faces Yazid and she says, Amin al-Adl, Yabna al-Tulaqa. That is this justice, O Yazid, that your own women are covered in hijab, while the women of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam are still here. While the women of Ahlul Bayt are stood here before non-Mahrams. See what great pain Ahlul Bayt had to go through to safeguard this message of hijab, this issue of ghairah, dear brothers and sisters. One of the most important qualities is this issue of ghairah, that if a person is sensitive according to his responsibility. First of all, I need to look at which responsibilities I have. As a follower of Imam Hussain al-Islam, I lift the flag of Imam Hussain al-Islam, I have responsibilities according to that. I need to show honor before that. I need to live my life, my values need to be according to the values of this flag. And now, I just want to quickly mention, inshallah, if we have enough time, just 6 to 9 issues which we need to show ghairat towards which we need to be modest, towards which we need to show sensitivity. What issues should we be sensitive towards? And as we said, ghairat doesn't just mean to be sensitive, rather taking action according to a person's responsibility. The first is ghairat when it comes to shirk. If we witness polytheism, any form of shirk, then we need to be sensitive towards that. For example, Nabi Musa alayhi salam, when he comes back down from the mountain, he sees that all of Bani Israel, they're worshipping a calf now. He says that the Quran said he became so angry that he grips his brother Harun from the collar. He says, how did you let this happen? Because he became sensitive towards the issue of shirk. I spent a lifetime guiding these people towards Tawheed, and now they're worshipping a cow. So sensitivity when it comes to shirk. Please recite aloud salawat. The second is ghairat when it comes to our sanctities. This is very important for us. If someone, let's say, is disrespecting the name of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, then we need to show sensitivity towards that. We need to protest against that. Similarly, if the book of Allah, the Quran, is being burnt today, then we need to be sensitive towards that, dear brothers and sisters. As followers of Sayyid al-Shuhada, we need to treat the burning of the Quran the same way, for example, the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada is being burnt. This is how we need to see it. So the second is being sensitive when it comes to one's sanctities. This is quite important for us. The third, which is mentioned, is sensitivity when it comes to the Muslimin around the world. I need to be sensitive when Muslims are dying around the world. I need to have care about them. I need to pray for them. I need to try and support the Muslim Ummah in whichever way I can. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, says, "Man sami'a rajulan yadil Muslim, falam yujibhu falaysa bi-Muslim." And if a Muslim hears the cries of another Muslim in the world and he doesn't respond, then he's not from our Ummah. He's not a Muslim. Particularly as followers of Karbala, we need to be sensitive when it comes to the issue of the oppressed. The fourth, which is mentioned, is sensitivity when it comes to the sanctity of the family of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. For example, if I was in Karbala at that time, then I need to show sensitivity. If Ahlul Bayt in Islam are being attacked. The next one is sensitivity when it comes to my own family. For example, if I see that hijab is being lacked in my household, then first of all, as the man of the house, and similarly, our sisters have a responsibility as well. as followers of Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa, we need to be sensitive when it comes to the issue of hijab. The next one is ghayrat when it comes to munkar, when it comes to forbidding against evil. One of the missions of Sayyid al-Shuhada is forbidding against evil. He says, I have risen for amal bil ma'roof and nahi anil munkar. If a society doesn't say wrong to something wrong to evil, in the narration say that society becomes insensitive towards sins. It becomes insensitive towards evil. It becomes insensitive while moving away from the camp of the Imam of the time. So finally, ghayrat means to be sensitive towards one's responsibilities. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, the Imam says, Allah has left 5 things for you, 5 sanctities for you, which you should hold, which you should regard as sanctified. You should show respect for them. Consider them as holy. The first, he mentions, Hurmat Rasulullah, the sanctity of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Hurmatu Ali Rasulullah, sanctity for the household of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Number 3, Hurmatu Kitab Allah, sanctity for the Book of Allah. Number 4, Hurmatu Ka'batillah, Hurmat, the sanctity of the Kaaba of Allah. And number 5, Hurmatul Mu'min, the sanctity of our fellow mu'mineen. This is also very important. We mentioned one of the manners to enter the month of Muharram in our first night is to consider the sanctity of each other as lovers of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Just imagine if I'm sitting next to someone in this majlis of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and I heard their heart. Have I ever considered that, this heart is a camp of Imam Hussain alayhi salam? Have I ever considered that this heart embraces the love of Allah? And if anyone violates these sanctities, the Imam says that he has violated the sanctity of Allah. Please recite it aloud, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tonight, however, dear brothers and sisters, is dedicated to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, the ghayrat of Karbala, the honorable of Karbala, the most modest of all men after Imam Hussain alayhi salam of the land of Karbala. And although Abbas alayhi salam isn't an Imam Ma'soom, he's not from the lineage of Bibi sallallahu alayhi wa, but he holds such a status that the Imam himself recites his virtues and praises. And he witnessed 4 living Imams in his time. He witnessed Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, and Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Even Imam Bargah alayhi salam. So 5 Imam al-Ma'asums Abbas alayhi salam had witnessed during his life. Imam Zaman Faraj Sharif says, may our lives be sacrificed for Abbas. Salam upon Abbas. Al-Muwasi akhahu binafsih. He gave his life up for his own brother. Al-akhidhu liqadihi min amsih. He took luggage from yesterday and he took it with him to reach tomorrow's destination. He took benefit from yesterday for tomorrow. I'm just going to ask one of the brothers to turn off the lights so we can concentrate on Abbas alayhi salam as we enter the scene of Karbala. Inshallah, take your hearts and minds to Karbala. After Karbala, dear brothers and sisters, whenever the eyes of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam fell upon the child, the son of Abbas, Ubaydullah, the Imam, his eyes were filled with tears every time he would see the son of Abbas. And he would say, Abla wa fada wa alsara, that he gave his life, he gave sacrifice, and in fact Abbas gave his whole being for the Imam of his time. Even in the ziyarat of Abbas alayhi salam, it holds a special value, something for which our prophets prayed for. In that ziyarah we recite, Assalamu alayka ayyuha al-abdu salih al-muti'u lillah wa li rasulih. This Abdul Salih is a great status for which even the Anbiya prayed for, to reach amongst the Salihin. In the final moments of our namaz, we recite, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillah as-salihin al-muti'u lillah. So the status of this flag bearer of Karbala, dear brothers and sisters, is highly great. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says in a hadith that our uncle Abbas has a status in the heavens for which all the shuhada, they envy that status. Sallallahu alayka ya ghareeb, ya madloom, ya atshan, ya Aba Abdullah. The greatest of shuhada amongst all shuhada in Karbala. When Abbas alayhi salam came to the Imam of his time to seek permission, the Imam says, Oh Abbas, if you go, then all my army will collapse. But there was no army at that time, Ya Abba. A lot of our ulama say that what the Imam meant by saying, Oh Abbas, my army will collapse, is that sense of stability for the women and children. Abbas, so long as you are here, at least Sakina, Salamullah alayha, will feel that sense of ease. I'm going to ask some of the brothers, in respect of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, please lower your heads, so that inshallah you can take your hearts and minds further to Karbala. One of the customs is that when we enter the Masayib of Ahlul Bayt al-Islam, if our tears, let's say, they don't come out, if we lower our heads, even this is counted as thawab. This is something for which the Zahra Salamullah alayha will intercede for. Lower your heads in respect of Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. Sallallahu alayka ya madloom ya Aba Abdullah. When Abbas alayhi salam would stand outside the towns, neither would the enemies attack the camps. They never attempted to attack the women and children of Hussain. Neither were the women and children scared of the enemies of Allah. And whenever the Imam would have to go to the battlefield to lift the bodies of his beloved companions, he had that sense of satisfaction that Abbas is there to guard the tents of the women. This is why in the final moments the Imam calls out, In Qasr-e-Abu Oh Abbas, now my final backbone has been broken, my support is over. Zainab calls out when Abbas falls, Wa Zay'ata. Now we are ready for imprisonment. He gave every single thing that he could for the Imam of his time. When the enemies of Allah cut the right hand of Abbas, this pain doesn't prevent him from his mission. His mission is getting the water back to the camps of the Ahlul Bayt. See, what's more important for Abbas alayhi salam isn't the water, rather it's the word of the Imam of his time. Because Imam Hussaini alayhi salam told him to get water, Abbas alayhi salam says, even if my right arm is cut, I have to get the water back because I have to obey the word of my Mawla Abu Abdullah Hussain. O Abbas, may our salams be upon you. On the day of Ashura, when he constantly hears the cries of the children, Al-Adash, Al-Adash, We are thirsty, we are thirsty. And because Abbas is honorable, he couldn't bear these cries any longer. He comes to his master and Imam al-Hussain and he says, Sayyidi wa Mawlai, laqad zaq sadri. Oh my Mawla, now my chest has become too heavy. I can't take it anymore. You have to let me go. On the day of Ashura, the Imam says a few times, O Abbas, may my life be sacrificed for you. Nafsi laka al-fida, ya Abbas. The Imam finally comes to Abbas and he says, O Abbas, may my life be sacrificed for you. Go and get the water for the children. Abbas goes into the tent. He collects the water bags and he sees that the children of Hussein are lying and they're hugging against the water bags, because you see the sand on the place of where the water bags are slightly cooler, and they were trying to cool their bodies down because, you know, the day of Ashura it's really hot in that desert of Karbala. They're trying to cool themselves down. Abbas, when he sees this, he can't bear this. He lifts the water bags and he marches out of the tent. The children of Hussein, their eyes become hopeful. They say, Uncle Abbas is now going to get the water. The children become happy. They say that because every single time Uncle Abbas, whenever he goes for a mission, he always completes that mission. He always comes back victorious. Dear brothers and sisters, when Abbas heads towards the river of Furat, there's something that the children of Bani Hashim were hopeful for. And it says that 4,000 men surrounded Abbas, but somehow he makes it to the river of Furat. This is the son of Haydar. He lifts the water bags. He's about to drink the water from Furat, but suddenly he remembers the cries of Sakina. He drops the water back into the river. He says, may my life be sacrificed for you. How can I drink water while the children of Hussein are thirsty? As he's heading back to the camp, 4,000 enemies try to stop Abbas. He calls out to them, he says, which kind of a religion do you follow, that you don't allow children to drink water, while dogs and swines drink from the river of Furat? Ya Abbas, فذكر عطش الحسين. 4,000 enemies are trying to stop Abbas. He looks up to the skies and he calls out, Ya Rabbi, awsilni bihim. Oh Allah, let me reach the camp of Hussein. Sakina is thirsty. Suddenly the Imam hears him call out, Wallah, inqada'tuhu yamini, inni uhami abadan an dini. I swear by Allah, even if you cut my right arm, forever I shall defend the religion of Rasulullah. The Imam hears the voice of Abbas change. Suddenly he calls out, Ya nafs, la takhshi min al-kuffar. Oh nafs, do not be afraid of the enemy. And now they've cut the left arm of Abbas. Suddenly the tone of Abbas changes. He suddenly calls out, Akha, adrik akhak. Oh my dear brother, brother Hussein, help your brother Abbas, for I've fallen in the battlefield. سقى دشت كربلا أبا الفضل أبا الفضل أبا الفضل. They say that when Imam Hussain, the son of the line of Allah, hears the voice of Abbas, his color changes. He rushes to the battlefield and he sees Abbas laying on the floor. His right arm is cut, his left arm is cut, he has arrows in his eyes. The Imam falls to the ground and he calls out, Al-an in Qasr-e-Abu Now my back has broken, O Abbas. O Abbas, get back up, the enemies are laughing at me. How shall I return to Sakina? O Abbas, you are my flag bearer. And when the enemies saw that Abbas had fallen, they said, now we've become certain that Hussein is all alone. Some of the enemies were laughing at Abu Abdullah. Sakina sees that the flag of Abbas is coming back, but she sees that Imam Hussain is walking, because after the shahadat of every single companion, the Imam brings back the body of every single companion. But when it comes to Abbas, she sees that Imam al-Hussain is leaning against the flag of Abbas in one hand, and the other hand he's holding against his back. She calls out, oh father, Aina ammi al-Abbas, where is my uncle Abbas? As-salamu ala al-Hussain وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله We ask Allah by the right of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad to send peace and blessings upon the heart of the Imam of the time. O Allah, we ask you to instill the love of the flag bearer of Karbala in the hearts of our children. O Allah, allow our children to live by the morals and values of Karbala. O Allah, we ask you, بحق الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها, to hasten the reappearance of the Imam of the time, and allow us to say labbaik to his call. Please recite aloud, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.